everyone, and welcome to here. The disembodied voice you'll hear throughout this video is me. I'm Karissa, one of the Student Success Commons tutors. I've been a math tutor with YCCC for about 11 years, and though I love math now, you should know that this has not always been the case. When I started off as a student at YC, I hated math, and frankly I was irritated that I had to take any math classes at all, because it's not like I'd ever have to use any of this stuff. Clearly, I ended up eating those words. But I'm telling you this because I know firsthand how stressful math can be when it's not your favorite subject or if it's not something you really want to do. To everyone out there who is stressed about their math class or is taking one simply because you have to in order to get your degree or certification, I've been there. And I'm here now as your ally. Hopefully the information in this video, along with the other resources available to you at the Student Success Commons, can help you make it through your math class. Side note for anyone watching this who doesn't hate math, hi, the information covered in this video applies to any student. So whether you love math, hate it, or are indifferent towards it, let's talk about the top tips and strategies that can contribute to successful math class completion. The tips covered in this video apply to all math classes or any math in general, but if you're interested in a little more specifics about either our quantitative reasoning or statistics classes, hang around a bit because towards the end of the video, I'll go into a little more detail about these two courses. We'll talk about how they're set up and what you can expect. But first, let's look at those top tips. There are three umbrella categories: time and energy, materials and resources, and communication and involvement. The number one, biggest, very important tip that I'm going to talk the most about is give your math class the time it needs. Ideally, you'll work on math every day of the week. Before you rage quit at that thought, let me explain what I mean and why this is the top tip. Although many students spend 1 or 2 days hammering out their math assignments for the week, this is unfortunately one of the least effective strategies if you want to succeed in a math class and avoid burnout. And here's why. The forgetting curve. Through his research, German psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus gave us the Ebbinghaus, or forgetting curve, a visual representation of the way that learned information fades over time if no regular action is taken to remember. The steepest drop in memory happens quickly after learning. What this means for math students is that you could spend 2 or 3 hours in one day immersed in math, be it in class, watching a lecture online, or working with a tutor on your homework or something at the SSC. But if you don't follow up with that soon afterwards, within a week or so, pretty much all that time and effort is just going to fade away. To avoid falling down the forgetting curve, one of the best things you can do is to break up your math sessions into several small chunks spread throughout the week. In the decades since Ebbinghaus' research into memory, hundreds of additional studies have been performed on the topic, and the consensus is this: practicing spaced studying is one of the most effective learning strategies. In one study performed at the University of South Florida, students were required to learn a particular math procedure and practice it by doing 10 problems. These students were split into 2 main groups. Group A consisted of students who did their practice problems all at one time, while Group B consisted of students who spread the practice problems out over multiple sessions. When Group A students were brought back and quizzed later on the material, there was a 43% drop in retention. The group of students who did their problems all at once had soon forgotten a significant amount of that information. On the other hand, when Group B students were brought back, there was only a 6% drop. So the students who spaced out their math practice scored significantly higher than those who did not. Utilizing spaced studying is a great way to get through any class, but especially math. Simply put, spaced studying means breaking up the typical multi-hour cram session into several small periods spread throughout each week of the semester. During any given spaced study session, you spend time learning and practicing new information, but you'll also routinely visit older material. Overlapping new and old information repeatedly and practicing concepts and strengthening your skills is one of the biggest benefits math students see from spaced learning. By the time a quiz or test comes around, you won't have to scramble to remember what you learned 2 chapters ago. You'll have been practicing it regularly. Essentially, using this method, you'll have been studying for tests and quizzes from day 1. Let's look at a simple example of how this strategy might play out. Let's say you have an on-campus class on Mondays and Wednesdays. So Monday, first week, you're introduced to a new topic. Let's say it's fractions. What you plan to do that day is to practice and clarify the concepts, start your homework, and visit the SSC if you need help. On Tuesday, you're going to revisit and continue practicing. Continue your homework, maybe finish it, maybe not. It doesn't have to get done all in one day. But at the end of your study session, you're going to preview the upcoming topic. Wednesday, class day, you already know what the upcoming topic is. You're going to get introduced to decimals, let's say. Similar to on Monday, you're going to work on practicing and clarifying the concept after class, start your homework, and visit the SSC if you need help. On Thursday, you'll first start by reviewing the information you had learned on Monday, so in this case, fractions. Then you can continue working with decimals after that. Friday through Sunday, mixed practice on both fractions and decimals. Continue and finish your homework. You can create and condense notes to flashcards. You can do extra practice problems, and you can preview the upcoming topic you'll learn about in class on next Monday. So now we're on to week 2, Monday, week 2. You're introduced to a new topic, let's say it's percentages. Later that day, you'll practice and clarify the concepts you learned in class, start your homework, visit the SSC if you need help. Tuesday, you're going to start your study session by revisiting fractions and decimals, the information you had learned last week. This time you'll only spend 5 to 15 minutes on it. After that, you'll spend a larger chunk of time working on the newest material, which is percentages. Wednesday, class day, you're introduced to a new topic. Let's say it's applications and word problems. After class, you can practice and clarify concepts, start your homework. Thursday, start off your study session with 15 to 20, maybe 30 minutes revisiting the 3 previous topics, which in this case, fractions, decimals, and percentages, and then spend a larger chunk of time reviewing word problems. And then Friday through Sunday, you can do mixed practice on fractions, decimals, and percentages, and the newest one, applications and word problems. You can divide your time however you need to. Practice a little more on decimals if you're a little shakier on those, or more on word problems, or if you need to. You can continue your homework, do extra problems, and again, create and condense any notes or flashcards, and then you can preview the upcoming topic for the next week, and the cycle just continues. Besides breaking up your study sessions into multiple segments to spend throughout the week to avoid the forgetting curve, here are some other tips for math class success. First off, plan your learning schedule ahead of time. You can use the syllabus and guides from the SSC tutors to help you figure out when you should be studying what and what kind of information is going to come back later and what isn't. As you learn new concepts, don't forget the old ones. Like I mentioned in that little example, you need to periodically revisit and practice older relevant material. If you're not sure if material is relevant, you can always ask an SSC tutor. Try to relate new information to concepts you already know. When you're learning about decimals, for instance, if you already know a bit about fractions, you can see how they relate to each other, or anything. Maybe it doesn't even relate to something you learned in math class. Maybe it's something you learned at work that is similar to something you're learning in math class. Just any way you can relate new information to something you already know, it's going to help it stick a little better. Frequently use your textbook or your ebook. A lot of great extra practice problems and examples are in there. You can always read problems out loud. That can help you understand it better and get through it a little easier. Try to understand the material, not just find the answer. The same goes for any mistakes made on previous questions. Try to understand why the question didn't work out the way you thought it did, and fill in any knowledge gaps. Remember, you're not necessarily done when your homework is turned in. If you have extra time during your scheduled study session, then you should work on extra problems or redo previous problems to continue building your understanding and ability to recall. That will really benefit you later on. At the end of every study session, take a moment to reflect on what you did. Try to summarize the topics or procedures you're using, especially in your own words. Create clear, concise notes written in your own words. When test time rolls around, you won't have a tutor or a study buddy at your side, so you should practice solving problems on your own to get comfortable with that. Okay, now on to category 2, materials and resources. Aside from the general materials like notebooks, pencils, highlighters, etc., one of the first things that often comes to mind for a math class is a calculator. You'll want to make sure you have a good calculator. The best calculator I've come across for any math class is the TI-84 Plus. It has all the features you need, and if you're ever unsure how to perform a certain task, there are many video tutorials available, plus SSC tutors can help you. If price is a factor when you're choosing a calculator, remember you can check thrift stores or online resellers to get a good deal. There are also emulators available for the tech savvy out there. I'll leave some links in the description if you're interested. I've worked with many students before who have done out a problem, written out all the steps, plugged in values, and they got an answer that they're told is wrong, and they proceed to spend the next 45 minutes trying to figure out how or where they messed up. Was it the wrong formula, were the values mixed up, whatever. Almost always, though, the student in the situation I just described did every single thing right up until the calculator part. So knowing how to enter fractions, exponents, or expressions with multiple operations correctly is very important. There's a practice problem here on the screen. You're welcome to try out with your calculator and see if you get the correct answer, which is coming up. Don't panic if you didn't come up with the answer of 2,238.27. SSC tutors will always be here for you throughout the semester to help you figure out how to use whatever calculator you do have. Some students I know already have it and can't go out and get the TI-84. In addition to knowing how to use your calculator, make sure you know about the order of operations and rounding rules. You'll notice that the answer that I have on the screen here has been rounded to 2 decimal places. That's pretty common in a lot of questions. If you need a refresher on either of these, especially the rounding rules, there are some links in the description to helpful resources. Tip for any YCCC math class, pay very careful attention to rounding requirements for any problem. Sometimes you're asked to round to 2 decimal places, sometimes you're asked to round to the nearest 100. It can change from problem to problem, and that can trip students up, so just pay very, very close attention to it. I've seen students do all the work perfectly, but they rounded incorrectly, giving them a final answer that was off by just 1 decimal place, and that can be frustrating, so just keep a close eye on that. Another important material available to you is your textbook or your ebook. I highly encourage you to make the effort to regularly read the course material provided to you. You can preview upcoming topics before class to give yourself an idea of what's coming, and after class you can read the material again, this time more thoroughly, to help reinforce the information. Many students feel overwhelmed when opening a math text. If you feel like your math textbook is nothing but complicated gibberish that gives you a headache, be sure to check out our How to Read and Actually Understand Math Textbooks tip sheet that will be linked in this video description. Good notes are another great resource for any math student. While reading your textbook and working on practice problems, you can take notes of questions you'd like to ask your teacher or tutor. Also make notes of keywords, important steps for problem solving, etc. that you can reference later. These kinds of notes are best put on flashcards for easy access and review. Many students find it helpful to have a separate notebook for class because class notes are often written down hurriedly and can end up somewhat messy, so a separate notebook comes in handy because you can transfer and neaten your class notes into your regular notebook or onto flashcards later on. When you are taking notes in class, don't try to write down everything that the teacher says or does. Definitions and formulas are available in your textbook or online. So just try to write down any example problems or any information that is marked especially important. If you don't have an on-campus class or lectures, you can still take notes when you study or meet with an SSC tutor. The last but not least thing I want to talk about in the materials and resources category is the Student Success Commons website. We have dozens of study guides, tips, links to tutorials and resources, and everything is available for free. Our website is constantly being updated and expanded to bring you the best available material. You can explore various topics, visit the library, get more information about our services, and easily connect with a tutor through our site. The Student Success Commons really is your one-stop shop for college success. On the screen here, you can see me navigating through our math section. We have a whole bunch of stuff for any level of math. If you need to practice fractions or decimals, percentages, we got a page for that. Trigonometry, got a page for that. We have links to video tutorials, easy access for calculators. For quantitative reasoning, we have the entire course broken down by section and chapter with tons of tutorials and reference materials. So I highly encourage you to check out our website. It is pretty great. Our last and probably most straightforward category of all is the involvement in communication. Math isn't everyone's favorite subject, and it can be difficult to stay involved in your course as the semester goes on. And asking for help isn't always the easiest thing for everyone. I know it isn't for me. I made the mistake of never asking for help when I was in one of my math classes. I distinctly remember laying on the floor one day in tears because I was just so overwhelmed, confused, irritated, frustrated. I do not recommend this strategy. Success in a math class or any class requires your active involvement. Be aware of what your course entails and what's required of you. Keep your syllabus handy so you have an idea of the scheduling, and always reach out for support if you need a helping hand. Spend time working with a tutor, but also by yourself to build confidence in your abilities and skills. So here are some of the key points that I'd like you to take away from this video. Aim to work on math several times a week. Continually review old material to avoid forgetting it or freaking out when test time comes. Avoid cramming and instead use the spacing method. Practice good time management. Repetition is often a key component to mastering math, so practice, practice, practice. Also practice studying problems on your own just to strengthen your abilities and skills. Be sure you know how to use your calculator and you're comfortable with it. Read your textbook. Take good notes. Utilize the online resources found at the SSC's website. Don't skip class time. If you miss a study session, try to get back on track ASAP. If you miss class time, be sure to inform your instructor and ask about what you missed. You are always welcome at the SSC. Ask questions whenever you need to. Check Brightspace several times a week for announcements or important information. You don't always have to work alone. Consider joining a study group. Math is an intimidating subject for many students, but it does not have to derail your educational plans. By utilizing proper study and time management strategies and taking advantage of all the resources available to you at York County Community College, you can make it through your math class. Connect with an SSC math tutor anytime with any questions. Okay, so now that we've covered the top tips and strategies for any math class, let's take a closer look at quantitative reasoning, Math 118, and statistics, Math 124. We'll start with QR. I like to call QR kind of a hodgepodge math class. You'll cover a lot of very useful information involving things like critical thinking, finances, units and conversions, and these are all things you can easily use in everyday life. But you'll also learn about graphing and mildly absurd word problems involving leprechauns, which may not be quite as relevant, but still, the material in this class helps build math skills and improves your ability to analyze and think creatively, no matter how weird the questions are. A lot of the subject matter may sound daunting, but don't panic. It's worth noting that the chapters don't really build off of one another, as is often the case in math classes. For example, once you're done with Chapter 4, you pretty much won't deal with that content again, and instead you'll move on to something new and different. Most of the students I've worked with in QR all agree that there are 1 or 2 chapters that they find especially difficult, but once they move past them onto a different topic, things get easier. Personally, I think a lot of the fun stuff is actually saved for the end of the class, the last few chapters. In addition, you don't need to come into this class with extensive math experience or knowledge. You're going to want to know how to round numbers properly. We have a guide for that in the description. And it's also going to be helpful to have a little bit of arithmetic, adding, subtracting, you need to know that. But also plugging in values into formulas. We have a link for that as well if you need to brush up on it. Ultimately, my advice is don't let the first few weeks of this class scare you off. Stick with it. Use the strategies from this video and stay in close touch with your instructor and the Student Success Commons for support, and you can make it. Now on to statistics, Math 124. This is one of my favorite classes. You'll cover a good deal of vocabulary in the first chapter, so I highly recommend you make flashcards for yourself to help remember the different terms and examples. You won't actually use all these terms throughout the whole course, but vocabulary flashcards will help you a lot on quizzes or homework when they pop up. In general, statistics breaks down into these 3 sections. 1, definitions of statistics, types of data and graphs. 2, probability, which is my favorite. If you don't love it, don't worry, I will love it enough for everyone. And 3, statistical inference, which is basically just using what you know to estimate what you don't know. If any of this stuff sounds frightening or you have no idea what I'm talking about, don't panic. All of the concepts will be thoroughly explained as you go through the course. You're not going to be expected to know anything about stats when you start. Previous math experience is helpful, but you don't really need to know a whole heck of a lot. You're going to want to know how to round. We have a guide for that in the description. And you're going to want to know basic arithmetic skills, order operations, and it'll be helpful if you've had experience plugging values into formulas. We'll have a few formulas too. But you really don't need a whole lot. Everything is going to be explained. And I love it, so if you ever work with me, I'll make it extra fun. Alright, that concludes our video today. Thank you for watching. If ever you need to get in touch with a math tutor at YCCC, the Student Success Commons, anytime throughout the semester, you can see our email address here on screen, yccmathtutor@gmail.com. You can feel free to email us anytime. You can stop into the SSC. You can visit our website. We would love to work with you. Thank you for watching and have a great day.